look over as construction proceeds. And here's a newspaper clipping of the construction progress when the press was invited in. Note the car on the in the backside there. I think that's a Wheatfield logo that's on the side of it right there. And this is the finished product. The first baby photos, if you will, of Town Hall, the new Town Hall. And that's another view of it. The final cost of the building actually was originally pinned at about $277,000. As with almost any project like this, the cost went up and ended up costing $350,000.
What year was it?
This is 1973. This is about summer of 1973. Now, coincidentally, at the height of the Watergate scandal was when Town Hall was officially opened. You're talking about different events taking place. While everybody was talking about Watergate, we were opening our Town Hall. Here's the opening ceremonies for that. This is on September 9th, 1973. Here we have the Boy Scout troops that are going to be given this flag, and they're going to be the ones raising it. I have an original program. I think it's in the folder here. I'm not totally sure. And that's the first flag going up thanks to the Scouts. And they're putting it up our first flagpole. Another one was installed later on. It was be a little more flexible. But that's a much older pole that came from something and was reinstalled on the site. And here are the Scouts raising it. We have that first flag in my office. This is the Wheatfield, what was then the Wheatfield Community Band performing in front. And a number of guest speakers. We have the program in here. Actually, I can read off a few of the names. This is Edison Stieg at the time, a World War II Army band leader who had been the head of several bands in the town of Wheatfield, including the Sanborn Band, Burkholtz Fire Company Band, and the Burkholtz German Band, and later the Wheatfield Community Band. And that's him receiving a nice award for his efforts later on. Here's Supervisor Stanley Brzezinski holding a very unique program. It was a circular card that flipped open in the middle, and that was your program. And a number of distinguished guests that I'll get to. This is a inside cover of that program. And so we have Stan Brzezinski as supervisor, Diet Tollner as town clerk, Vernon F. Troyer as the town justice, Herman K. Bache as a town justice, James Hoyer, councilman, Winston Moeller, councilman, Henry F. Kruger, the superintendent of highways at the time, Norman A. Walk, the superintendent of water, Erwin D. Jagow, building inspector, Glenn S. Hackett was the town attorney then, and Kribel, Quay, Rugg, and Hall were the architects. So among the guests that were there was Congressman Henry P. Smith III, and we had comments by, let's see. Okay, the Reverend Rolf Buckman from St. John's Lutheran Church did the invocation. And the programs were distributed by the Wheatfield 4-H Club. This is the plaque that decorates the inside of it today, illustrating some of the names I've just mentioned. And the town seal was actually created about this time, too. We didn't really have a town seal to officially put up. I mean, there were some decals done at the time, but not an official seal, conceptually speaking. And a town seal was created at about this time and officially installed on the side of the building. Miss Gay Brzezinski, Molnar, the daughter of the supervisor at the time, she actually created the patchwork quilt version of this logo, which can also still be seen in the current town hall. But it was removed from the dais eventually when a more formalized sign was put up under the Demler administration, so that got moved to another wall. So when you're coming into the back and you look to your right, you can still see this beautifully quilted version of our seal on the wall there at the ramp, handicap ramp. This is the first town board meeting in the new town hall. Now compare this with the earlier photos of the last town board meeting at their conference table there. big difference. New lighting, new everything that you'd expect. So then there's some more photos of the first deliberations inside the new town hall. That's a photo taken within the town clerk's office at the time, and that's Diet Tollner or Diet Furchin later on, and she's doing signing something alongside of Mr. Brzezinski. It's a story on tax rates and so forth. You know, boring stuff. Whatever. It was a nice article. Um, Here are some members and leaders of our senior citizens group posed in front of the building. About 1974, 5, right in that range. Now, in 1998, Tim Demler, our supervisor at that point, held a nice 25th anniversary celebration and rededication of the building. You had a number of prominent people there, including most of the surviving members of the original town council. And that was a beautiful event. Mr. Brzezinski himself stepping forward and congratulating everybody in attendance for keeping such a town hall well loved. You know, it was a lot of good stuff. What happened there on the lower floor actually was our first community center before it got moved and established elsewhere on the premises, and everything was held downstairs originally. But it became so packed over the years with people coming in and out for various Christmas and other events that eventually the new building was constructed. Here's the official ribbon cutting. This is Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Demler, Mr. Hoyer, and Mr. Mahler presiding. That's the cake that they cut in the lower room downstairs. Now, this is all offices now. They needed the additional space, and so they filled it up. But at that time, you can still see the wall paneling is still up, and there's a nice photo of everybody in there. And these are the supervisors that have had administrations in the building since it's been open. So we have, after Stanley Brzezinski, there was Edward Greiner, and after him was Terry Kuhn. After that, it's Tim Demler, Robert B. Cliff, and the current supervisor today, Don McSwan. This is a holiday greetings card that was printed in 1998 for the first tree lighting. Along with the rededication, a few other firsts came about. One of them is our annual holiday tree lighting ceremony, and it still takes place every year. But back then, it was held at Town Hall, because remember, there was no community center yet. Everything still took place at the first building there. And that's the building as it was in later years. The town seal on the outside of it, like that, was also put up in 1998, and we just refreshed it and put new ones up because they had faded by now. That's the front of it now. There was a planting in this front planter area here, but evidently they didn't want to really take care of it, so they pulled it out. Now, this is a meeting in front of Town Hall when they were talking about a new community center, and this is about 1998, 1999. And since that time, too, along with the community center and the youth center, have gone right behind there, our new Veterans Monument and Memorial. And as you can tell, it's just a beautiful new addition to our evolving town center for civic and other activities. We have the Korean War era tank on one end and the Huey helicopter bell manufacturer on the other end right there. Don McSwan was a combat medic and during the Vietnam War, and has spoken right here. We got his books for sale over there, and he was quite taken emotionally when the helicopter was revealed as a medevac helicopter specifically. So, got the nice markings there. This is the inside of the audience chamber. And of course, in the last 20 years, the town hall's been expanded off the back to include an elevator and other handicap accessible requirements, but also a few extra spaces, including additional offices for the courts. They need an additional room there. So if you look off the back of town hall, you can see how they've added to it. And of course, more recently, we've had the swearing in of not one, but two supervisors at the same time, unique in the history of our town and for Niagara County. when twins Don and John McSwan were respectfully sworn in as supervisors of Wheatfield and Cambria, respectfully. So I took this one. I took these for this year. So lots of fun stuff have happened here, including that. And this is a brand new photo taken. The first meeting held for this year in the same town hall. So, and that is all, everybody. Thank you very much.
So how many buildings are in that area now?
There are 4 main buildings as of this year, actually, because we have our new storage and workshop facility for the Wheatfield Enhancement Volunteer Group, as well as our Wheatfield Veterans Committee, Monument Committee. So that's the 4th new main building there. There are 5 altogether, really. They got a little bit of a maintenance and storage facility on the site, too. But there are 4 main buildings: Wheatfield Town Hall, Wheatfield Community Center, the Wheatfield Community Youth Center, and the larger storage facility and workshop for our enhancement volunteers, for example.
Okay,
Yeah.
now how does Wheatfield pay for these things?
They would have been paid for in bonds. You leverage out various funding bonds to pay
I'm just
for it.
not familiar. I mean, I know we have a city tax.
Right.
Do they have a tax?
We do not. Town of Wheatfield does not have a town tax, although for a time we had a highway tax to help pay down some of the debt that we had for a while in the later 2000s. But yeah, yeah, there would have been bonds issued. It depends on the building. I'm not exactly sure. I know bonds were issued for Wheatfield Community Center, and those would have been paid back over time. And Wheatfield Town Hall itself was paid for out of something else.
If town taxes aren't collected, how do you pay for it? The bond has to be paid eventually.
Yeah. Well, the more financial nitty-gritties I'm not as well versed in.
I believe the county tax that we,
Right.
Bud just said he paid on this house, and I paid the property that butts his house.
Yeah, because we're
And some
connected
of that
directly to
money
the
comes
county.
back from the county into the town.
Yeah, we're connected directly to the county with regards to
I just
financing.
went-
So, I believe it was through the
The other
county.
day went down to the town hall to pay my taxes, because I live in the town of Wheatfield.
Yeah.
And it's town and county tax
Yeah.
combined.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I was going
Okay,
to add that if you, well, anybody in Niagara County, but this is North Tonawanda people, if you participate in early voting,
Yes.
the site is at the community center.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we do.
Yeah, I've worked for Board of Elections. I was chairman of that polling place twice. So, yeah. And people ask us questions like that all the time too. But yeah, it's been a real long and interesting development of our town halls. But every town is unique in how they've put their governments together over time. I'm most interested in the schoolhouse environment, trying to put yourself back into that kind of community where everything was so local and so profoundly connected. I mean, your neighbor or your own older sister might be also your teacher, in the same school system or something like that. It was a much closer environment. And researching this has been a lot of fun as well. Of course, when a lot of kids were hanging out with other kids or something like that, I was at Town Hall in 1996, meeting up with people over there. I was very civic-minded, and I wanted to somehow know and contribute to this. I also thought, I like underdog subjects that people don't normally talk about. You go to town hall, you go to city hall, everybody necessarily talks and complains and brings up various issues, and that's where you debate. That's where you do all the hard work of keeping a community together. But hardly anybody ever talks about the buildings themselves, the original intent of the institution, of what it's supposed to do for the community, all the different services, the civil servants who work on a daily basis with a lot of math, a lot of concentration, and they're just coming in and out, all the court proceedings and so forth. What kind of a building, what kind of a civic temple has existed over the years to consolidate these sorts of things? When you consider how utilitarian a building has to be and how multi-purpose it has to be, these are some of the hardest working and some of the most interesting buildings in American history. And they're hardly ever really talked about, besides maybe the architecture of something like Buffalo City Hall. Well, that's an Art Deco temple right there, right? That's an obvious, prominent example people don't mind talking about. But for some cities and some towns and some villages, those were the cores of their communities. You had your churches, and you had your pubs and so forth, right? I mean, the Dutch, when they settled New Amsterdam, right? It's now New York City. They didn't get around to building their first church for the first several years, let alone town hall. What they built first were the counting houses, right? And other such spots like that to do business, because that's what they were primarily involved with. So,
The schools are sort of separate, and they have their own taxing system.
yeah, the school districts were different then. You had 9 school districts making up the town of Wheatfield. Going back to 1836 to 1870, I think they had 5 or 7 to start with and expanded to 9, and eventually they would be consolidated in the 1950s. They had a whole other separate tax base for collecting funds to maintain those buildings and to give stipends to the teachers and supporting staff that would come in. You had no formalized system like you have today. Our tax system is very different after consolidation than before. I think we were working on a stipend system back in the day with regards to certain districts. And again, that comes down from the county since we never had a town tax as such. Yeah, it's
Okay,
complicated on the
now-
financial angle.
Now you have fire halls,
Right,
okay,
they're fire districts. Yeah.
fire districts, all right. How are they maintained?
Well, they have they're similar to the school districts. I mean, they have their own tax system that we pay for to maintain those through a separate line item. But again, with regards to taxes in general, I don't know those as well as just looking at who built what. It's just more my interest.
Is
Yeah.
Burkholz a separate entity?
It is an unincorporated hamlet.
Okay.
We have no incorporated villages in the town of Wheatfield. It feels very much like a village, like an incorporated village, a lot like Lewiston is, for example, like the village of Lewiston. But it is not an incorporated community. It never had its own town board or village board, never had its own mayor. It just relied and was satisfied with the town board and the town of Wheatfield at the time since its inception. Burkholz was founded after the town was founded in 1836. And, they appreciated the small government. They came from a place where there was a lot of government hanging over them on a number of levels. And they appreciated, but also had to contend with a lack of central government like that. They were not quite used to it. So they had to really rely on themselves and each other and depend on the church parishes or the church environments for the sense of order in the community, that sense of community involvement. Yes, there was a town board. Yes, there was a town hall. But with the doubling as a schoolhouse, well, it's small government, right? People had to be much more self-sufficient back in those days. They maintained their own streets. They maintained a lot of their own infrastructure at the time.
So what are the boundaries of Wheatfield?
Wheatfield would be bounded up between halfway between Lockport Road and Saunders Settlement, roughly the halfway point there, right? Yes, exactly,
Come on.
because that's the boundaries of the town up in there,
Okay.
and of course you go to the east, and for example, it's the southwest part of the town, you've got the delineation of 102nd Street, like east side of 102nd Street over is the town. Town Line Road next to Pendleton there is our boundary there, and what was our southern boundary originally Wheatfield Street, then became extended once the city here was founded. That delineation generally is along the termination of where Ward Road comes into Oliver, for example, over here.
Like where we are right now, this was the town of Wheatfield.
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh, yeah, all
it's
of it.
changed a lot, It changed a lot in the mid 1800s, yeah, as I mentioned. So
And when did actually the village, going back when there was just Tonawanda
mm-hmm.
on either side of the canal or the Tonawanda Creek, whatever you want to say,
Mm-hmm.
probably the canal at that it was all Niagara County, correct?
That was originally all Niagara to
Yeah,
start,
and then
Erie splits
Erie
off by
County broke
1808.
off.
Yeah,
What year did Erie break up?
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I mean, everything fragments and splits up over time, and it's interesting to see the evolution of these things. Yeah, really
I've
is.
always questioned, I mean, what, this, the separation between, I guess they said the fourth ward or whatever, the land north of the canal.
Mm-hmm.
And there was, and then I read a little bit up on this one, and you were going to be speaking at it. There was a special government disposition or something to allow the fourth ward to split off from the village of Tonawanda.
Right, and I want to also defer to this museum because I also I want to give a chance for other people to interject on that one too, because now you're looking into the Tonawandas as an identity point, and you're going far enough back. You're going into Erie County or Niagara County history, which was Niagara County and Erie County before they split up. And so the further you go back, you go more into the Erie Canal zone in general, or you're talking about the Niagara Falls zone of identity and interest. And it really is by the 1830s into the 1840s, you're starting to see a coalescing of a different interest in between those two, a difference between them. And of course, the Burkholz and Prussian Uckermark settlers really helped solidify that. There's a lot to it at that point. That really starts to delineate the town of Wheatfield from the Tonawandas and Niagara Falls proper. But I would say that's not really firmed up until the 1890s. The borders were not so strict on the ground for a lot of people as it would be later.
Wheatfield still has a code for NT.
Yes, town of Wheatfield does not have its own zip code, and we've talked about this on and off for a number of years, but it's a postal issue, it's a federal issue, and right now everything functions reasonably well enough across the board. But there has been a great deal of interest from some areas as to whether we should have our own zip code or not for the sake of business and other entities and the ease of business, the ease of making sure mails and so forth go to the right location. But sometimes it is a hang up because they'll see North Tonawanda or Niagara Falls and they
I
assume
think
it must go.
north of Niagara Falls Boulevard, I think is Niagara Falls.
Right. We have the Niagara Falls zip code. We have Sanborn. We have a little bit of Pendleton in there too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody.
So
knows
it's
that. They all come
it's
together.
it's complicated. Yeah. But
Sanborn
the-
has its own zip code,
Yeah, they have
right?
a post
Sanborn
office.
has its own zip
It
code.
has its own zip code, no post office. Yeah. Nothing against them. I love the Sanborn people in particular. They're really
Yeah,
great.
but they're still part of Wheatfield, right?
Sanborn, yeah.
Lewiston, isn't it?
It's
Isn't
in
the line
Lewiston. Yeah, it's the Sanborn's in Lewiston. Although there's blending there too. I think a lot of see when I maintain the and lastly when I maintain the Wheatfield History Facebook group page, and I encourage everybody to go there and continue to add to the comments. This is always a work in progress. What I do, always a work in progress. Always learning, and always adding to these studies. There is of course an overlap. In many ways, between not just North Tonawanda and Wheatfield, for example, but the area known as Wurlitzer. On our maps, Wurlitzer is a hamlet of the town of Wheatfield, interestingly enough. LaSalle sometimes is mentioned as being in Wheatfield, and we go back and forth, the same families and whatever go along those lines. Sanborn blends into Wheatfield nicely. If somebody submits something Sanborn related, I'll put that there because ultimately there is a back and forth there. And even Hoffman Station, another hamlet in the town of Wheatfield, actually existed half in this town, the other half basically in Pendleton. And so if somebody mentions something about even on the other side of the street in Pendleton, I'll accept that.
Where was Hoffman Station?
Hoffman Station is where the former New York Central Railway and Erie to Rochester Railway line goes through. About midway up Town Line Road between Pendleton and Wheatfield up in
And that
there.
was the Huffman family, so it was Huffman
Right.
Station and Beach Ridge Station, and they were
Yeah,
all
exactly.
over the place.
If you go there, you can actually park your car on the east side of the road there on Town Line, and you can actually take that nice Rails to Trails system there. The railroad's long gone, and you can actually park there and ride and walk your bike there. I just did it. It's a beautiful, beautiful trail that I hope will be extended through our town to meet up with ideas for converting that same rail line as it goes into North Tonawanda by the Wurlitzer factory and have that continue through. I think that'd be nice.
St. Johnsburg did have a postmaster at one point
Yeah.
in the building that is not occupied right now at the northeast corner of Niagara Falls Boulevard and Ward Road.
Which became eventually Janik Steakhouse and a lot of other things. That's
Numerous.
another beautiful building we have in the town.
Yeah, a little bit of it is still there because
Yeah, oh, well, the part that's still
to build
there.
a new building, they had to leave part of the facade.
Yeah, so
But I have postcards that say, like my family name, and just, I think, Route 1, and you just went and got, I guess you went and got your mail there.
Mm-hmm.
I have a little quick story.
Yeah, I'll take a
we
couple
talk
more
about
questions
school
and
districts. I lived in 3 different locations.
You're sitting in the dark.
Some in North Carolina, some in the town of Wheatfield. But I went to Colonel Penn School for each one of those houses. So I mean, how things get switched around and the school districts.
Yeah, by all means.
It upsets me that so many people, they think, well, my neighbors, they think they live in North Tonawanda. And I said, there's a sign on the end of the street, entering North Tonawanda. Where do you pay your taxes? Oh, they just are, they
Well,
don't know this stuff.
How much has the town grown? It's grown pretty exponentially over the years. I mean, in my files, I got just over 4,000 assessment cards for 4,000 different lots. There's easily double that today.
First it shrunk,
So I mean that, yeah,
first it shrunk, and then
expanded. Yeah, we were technically the fastest growing community in New York State for quite a while, and our population stands at around 19,000 today. So, I mean, as the town continues to evolve, we may revisit subjects like the post office. We might revisit other things like that. Part of our evolution. And who knows?Maybe a 4th town hall down the line, but probably not right anytime soon.
So the town hall opened in 73.
Yeah.
So did they have a 50-year kind of thing? Because 23 would have been.
Yeah, I was planning on having that in town hall, but I think we were just busy with other things at the
Yeah.
time, and I wanted to make sure we were going to have a real event there. But that's okay. We have the community center today, and we'll probably have this presentation updated and refined for that later on this spring. And at that presentation, I will invite our 2 surviving council people from that time to attend, because this has been a beautiful dry run. What'd you think? What'd you think of it? Yeah. So,
Thanks a lot, Justin.
thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
I know probably kind of a couple.
We're young. We're the ones that very
I see. Yeah, I know Judgment. The person who lives in Judgment. Everybody knew that. In that whole
File these things away. And this is my office. This is my travel office. Got the history of the town. Examples of
Which is now the son of the Griner supervisor that he mentioned, who oddly enough, this is really I'm distantly related to my mother's family, which is in Atlanta.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I would say
Most
we
of
also
the
have
people
a beautiful community center.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of the best in this whole region. I could tell it's one of the best community centers. It's very well used, very well utilized.
It's a lot of people.
But the Griners and my mother's family.
No, I think when we started early voting, it was a